Welcome and thank you for joining us again at the beginning of your week and our week as well. We're going to talk about how to find your true nature, and we thought that this was an apt conversation, given that last week we spoke to Queen of the Wild, Brittany Jane Laidlaw, and how she takes women into the wild to actually find their authentic self. And that was just an amazing conversation, talking about the heroine's journey, not the hero's journey, and there is a difference. And this Wednesday night, we're following on with another interview with Britt's partner, actually, Darvis Walker, who takes men into nature, and he actually takes them in. And sometimes they have solo journeys and they end up using the landscape to discover parts of themselves. Like, it's just such an interesting way that he works with men. So that's coming up this Wednesday. So we felt that talking about your true nature in the middle of both of those would be pretty apt. Hi, Carolyn.
Hi, Lisa. Hi, everyone. So gorgeous to have you here again. And yeah, so enjoying these conversations. They really are illuminating. And yeah, I thought it was a fabulous conversation with Britt last week. And it definitely so interesting because, when she's bringing women, a multitude of women on that journey, and that I had this calling myself into the wild. And I really didn't have any map. Like she talks about it, she has a map. She creates this. She has this kind of PhD she's doing on a process as such, which was really exciting because it definitely married up with my experience of what happened within myself, and how I know Jarvis talks about as well, bringing men in, and really the focus is as well about finding their purpose, is finding their true nature, but also when you do that, you are finding your purpose in the world. So it's very much a creative time as well. So it's funny how I think when I look back at that time, when I kind of had that busy life in Dublin, and two kind of smallish kids. I suppose there was 7, 5, and 7, I think, at the time, and I had been studying, and I had been lecturing, and I had running the business and doing all the mum stuff, and dropping off and picking up and all that kind of stuff. And amidst all that, like, I had a great opportunity to become director of the course that I was doing, and all of a sudden then I got this calling. It was like, no, I wanted to go into simplicity. I wanted to go back to nature, and it was like I was being called back to my own nature, and it was being brought back into kind of a sense of myself, the sense of myself as a child. It was like this kind of very pure essence of who I was underneath everything else, underneath my roles, like as a mother, as a daughter, as a sister, as a wife, as a professional. There was something calling me that was underneath all of that, that was really true to who I was, and actually true to in that was kind of coming back into the harmony of life itself, that it was kind of as if you were paring a pencil, and I was trying to get back to the point of my existence, and why I was here. And it actually was also, there was two things happening. One thing was like, I wanted to come back into silence and back into like what was really important to me, and this feeling of this beautiful feeling of just my own essence, identity, as I call, my true, I suppose, the essential self, what's essential about me and what's essential about my existence in the world, and how can that have have an impact on where we are right now here. So you need to be kind of, I suppose, you need presence for that. You need to come into presence, and it's kind of like as if you're distilling yourself down into what are my gifts and my talents, what you're trying to integrate all of your life experience. What are the amazing things that you've achieved, but what are the really difficult things that have been in your life as well, and what can you distill and integrate the learning from that and the understanding of that, and your whole past experience, and bring all that into this moment, and then to look at where society is now, and how can that person who has been created here now, speak to, to where we're at now. And it was kind of as if I was, that's when you find your purpose. So that's the journey, that retreat that Darvis and Britt are doing as well with men and women. So what comes from it then is you get this really strong sense of yourself, and then you also see where maybe life might want to use you in the capacity that you have actually been created specifically for this time, you know. So it's really really interesting because it's also you're getting back to your true nature and your true sense of yourself, but you're also, for me, was connecting in with nature in my environment, that kind of as if I was disconnected from that, um, to a greater degree, because I had, I suppose, been taken away from it in when you go into academia, or you go into your working professional life, and you go into a busy kind of family, you you become very head based, and you're not feeling, you're not feeling your environment, you're not feeling, you're very busy, this busyness all the time. And also, if that's the way culture is, that you get maybe washed away with that. So it nearly takes that time, that reflective space, to pull yourself away from, I suppose, everybody else's, that general, that talk that everybody, like, what's the weather like, and how, the
Mm.
everyday the everyday chatter, that goes on. Like, when you actually bring yourself away and just create those spaces within your day, even, you don't have to go into a major retreat, but even like giving yourself some time in the morning, or creating those spaces to kind of really connect to your own essence. And then nature is a fantastic teacher of that, because it's so it's so soothing, it gives you that kind of balm nearly, to it's non-judgmental, and it's so enriching, such an enriching experience to just sit with nature. And it actually, it's like you're not doing anything, you just open up to it, and it starts to come in and do the work that needs to be done in that renovation, and I call it, like, I was renovating the cottage, but it was really the restoration of myself as well. At the end of it, I realized, like, actually the cottage was restoring me. And I was at this interior design project within myself, and then it was kind of like I had renovated or contemporized myself, that way you caught up with who you were, what you wanted to hold on to, and what needed to be updated. So holding on to what was true about myself and what was I wanted to bring forward, but then letting go of the things that I felt
Mm.
weren't necessary. So it was more of a contemporary version of myself, and then always to know that you're always kind of going to be updated as you go through life all the time. So for me, then, the practice of contemplation each day, then, in integrating my experiences, or it's a constant thing where you're always wanting to integrate what your life experience happens to you in a day-to-day basis, and let that be another learning that you can bring forward. You know what I mean? So it's like, it's very powerful then, because you're always alchemizing what life is informing you about, and also, you're gaining from the learning that you've distilled from, yeah, your experience. So, like, it's
Mm.
it's such an amazing journey to take, and I love to hear the work that they're doing. And for yourself, Lisa, like, I suppose I did that. It was an obvious type of a calling and a retreat that I was taking on. But for other people, like, it doesn't always happen like that. That's kind of
Mm.
quite an unusual thing to happen. I was saying, in my research that I've done since then, I know that not many people have kind of happened to them in that way, and a lot of people, it's mainly incremental
Yeah.
kind of, throughout their life. And I think your journey was a little bit like that, back to your true nature. If you'd like to share a little
Yeah,
bit about that.
definitely. I would say that I had a about, I don't know, 16 to 18 years ago. I had a big shift or an awakening, but it was the integration of that, the embodiment of that in the consecutive years, that really brought me back to who I really was. And I speak to a lot of clients that say, I've forgotten who I am. Like, I just can't remember who I am. And I think that was pretty true of me at 37. Even if I had actually, I didn't even know that I really knew who I was. It wasn't even that I'd forgotten. It was that I don't think I'd ever actually really known.
Mm.
And it wasn't until I started to feel, like really feel, get in touch with what I was feeling and how I was in relationship, discovering how I was in relationship with people, and really questioning, what do I want? Like, does this make me feel good? Am I doing this for the right reasons, or am I doing this to be loved or to feel secure or to people please? Or when I started to ask myself all of those questions and I started to really understand the way I worked, that brought me closer and closer and closer to what had meaning for me, and this deeper sense of connection to myself. And I started to have a new level of self allegiance and self respect and self honoring, which also then meant that I could, in my relationships, I was seeing that reflect out. So, so much changed when I came
Mm.
more into myself and, like, what is it that's right for me? What is it that feels good for me? And even now, I still ask that question to myself. If I'm in a situation and I can see there's things going on that I might not be able to control, it might be, well, I can't do anything here. Does this feel good being here? It's like, well, no, well, I need to leave. I'm out of here. Like, there are just things that I do now that I never would have done before. And I think that's because I know how to care for my own emotional well-being. I know how to care for my mental well-being.
Mm.
And that to me has everything to do with knowing my true nature, because I'm honoring it. Whereas before I was often insulting it. I was
Mm.
walking away from my true nature to
Mhm.
get other people to love me. And really, my true nature is love. Like, I have all that within me. And I had to discover that for myself. And I love what you say about distilling. I think that has been a really powerful activity for me, is like looking back at the parts of my nature that have always been there in one way or the other. And they've come through in different versions of me as I've
Mm.
grown older. And then looking at the things in the same vein, the things that maybe have been my wound, if you want to call it that, that I can see all the way back when I look back, and how they've popped its head up, in all these relationships. And it's like those things that I want to let go of. That,
Mm.
I consciously think about that. I consciously am redesigning myself to let go of the things that don't serve me. And I'm consciously thinking about, how do I want to be? What are the things I want to bring more of into my life, and redesigning myself in a way that has a greater potential and a greater creative capacity, which is a lot easier for me when I'm more in my true nature, because there's nothing in the way. It's like when I had all those roles and those identities, and I was being all those things for all those
Mm.
people, I was like I had all these veils over me, and I couldn't even often see the person standing in front of me as clearly as what I do now, because all of these veils of my identity and my perceptions about things were in the way. So it is definitely a peeling back, and like a coming into your, you know, trust, deep trust of yourself,
Yeah.
and deep honoring of yourself, which takes courage. But I think that coming back to the true nature, and really, really, the other day I was walking along and I was just reflecting or contemplating on this sort of similar topic, and I just thought, wow, I'm here. I am here. And it was almost like that's really all that we know in any moment, that I am here. And it just felt like such a miracle that I could
Mm.
be here enjoying this experience. Everything else was the add-on.
Yes.
So it was, that was a really powerful moment for me, having that realization. And I think that when you come back to that, it's almost like, for me, it's a blessing, because the more I've known myself, the more, when I focus on that, it's like anything can go on in the outside world, but it's almost like you have a real secure,
Mm.
stable presence inside of you that
Mhm.
is you. It's the truth of who you are, and nothing can shake that. And that to me is like priceless in the chaotic world that we live in.
Yeah, absolutely. That's amazing, and it is like it's about the homecoming, as I call it. That coming home to yourself,
Mm.
that you're not, because if not, you're creating like an identity that's outside of yourself. It's like a mental image of yourself that you attach yourself to. Like your mind attached to it. And then I always notice like that life then will always take that away. It'll test you
Mm.
that way. It'll attack that because it's not true, you know. And it's like as if that's the suffering in life. The suffering is always when you're working from this false identity that's outside of yourselves
Mm.
that we've created. Um, and it's not until we bring ourselves back into the essence of ourself that can never be like that place. We're talking about the Rainbow Warrior is really that character that in the children's book, the place that can never, it's the unseen part of us that can never be destroyed, can never be insulted, can never be hurt, can never be, it's always constant and it's always creative, it's always loving, it's always caring, it's this constant part of us that's connected to absolutely everything else in the whole cosmos. And that the power comes from there, that you can, when you tip into that, it's like you're
Mm.
tipping into true creativity and like the creative force. And it's just a force of life itself. So it's like your portal to the force of life itself that you works through you. And that's when, you become empowered and, your true nature comes through.
Mm.
But it's like as if, to me, then, like the vessel that you are is unique in the world. So even though the force comes through you, the creative force comes through you, your uniqueness is is very important in the whole, design of life. So that's also a very beautiful thing to think about, because everything that you've learned, all your life experiences and all your skills and talents and everything that you are in this, I suppose, yeah, like we could say the vessel or the design is is unique, and it has a unique place and purpose, and it belongs here. It's supposed to be in service of the whole as such. So that's when the purpose kind of comes into play, and when you start to understand that you're so valuable and priceless, and everybody
Mm.
else is that, and you recognize that in yourself, then you can see that everybody else is priceless as well. Everybody else is of high value. Everybody else has a unique place, and often then the work is to just try to illuminate that in other people. And that's,
Mm.
when you see people move into purpose, it's always about that. It's about empowering other people. It's about, letting them see that for themselves as well.
Mm.
So it's kind of like you
Yeah.
become this healthy cell then. So it's amazing to do that work and need to start on that journey,
Mm.
self
I think
discovery.
so. And I think just to sum up, because we wanted to keep this chat
Yeah.
sort of short if we could, but when you were sharing just then, I thought what really helped me find myself or my true nature was working on the emotion, because every
Mm,
time I was in reaction, I was taking myself outside of my true nature. So for me, being aware of the way I turned up in relationship, like the way I felt, the way, what was driving me emotionally, and being
mm,
able to understand my emotions, that actually was the key for me. It was the more emotional work I did, the more I understood my true nature, because I was getting out of the way what wasn't real. I was removing the false, and I was seeing the false as false the whole time.
mm,
And that I could only do through that, like working on how I was feeling and looking at the way I was reacting. So for
mhm,
me, that was a real key to being able to find that. And like you said, it was more incremental for me. It was like over time,
mm,
um, constantly looking at these things that turned up in my life and using them as a way to show me where I wasn't actually being true to myself,
mhm.
and starting to keep stepping into the truth of myself with each of those emotional reactions.
Amazing. And that's why you're
Mm.
that's why you're doing that today, Lisa.
That's right.
Just
That's
with
why I'm
purpose.
so passionate about it today. So I
Yeah.
take people on that journey.
Yeah, exactly, you see?
It's like, it's true. It's
Yeah,
so powerful, and it's much,
yeah,
for me. It really is. Even though it's taken
yeah,
time, I think it's a quick journey. Like, you could go to an ashram
yeah,
and meditate and hope to be enlightened in, I don't know, however long that takes. But I think that understanding your emotional self can bring you back to your true nature
mhm,
much quicker than that. Or like, I think fairly quickly, in terms
yeah,
of other things that you could do. So
yeah.
yes,
Yeah, it's like, you're doing it in life when you're living, and that's what life is designed to
that's
be,
right.
that's what it's for, to be, using life to I suppose, bring out your truth, and find your truth and shine your truth in the world, So that's
Yeah.
amazing. Thank you so much, Lisa. We might finish up there because we're supposed to be 15
Thank
minutes.
you. Thank you, Caroline. I know we're only a few minutes over.
We're not too
Thank
bad.
you, Caroline. It was very good. Thank you, everyone, for joining us again this evening or this morning. And we'll see you Wednesday.
Yeah, for Darvis. Can't wait. Don't miss that, guys. Take care.
No, that's going to be great.
Bye.
Bye.